Welcome to Innovate Now. I'm your host, Kevin Little. I'm pleased to welcome Lawrence to our Kagool studios here in Birmingham. And in today's session, we're going to cover off actionable insights into SAP data migration by focusing on critical pillars of success, which is people, process, and tooling. So before we get started, Lawrence, could you just introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. So Lawrence, I'm one of the data migration leads here at Kagool. Been doing it for a fair number of years and do my fair share of data migrations, so I feel like I'm pretty qualified to talk about this with you today.
Good, great. So in today's session, we're going to cover off real-world examples on highlight organizations and challenges and discussions that we've had about our proprietary software here at Kagool called Pulse, so which delivers exceptional results across multiple industries. So as far as the first question is concerned, like to be a bit of a big picture question, if you don't mind. So why is data migration such a critical step in an SAP transformation, and what's at stake if it's not done well?
So we're really not starting with an easy question here. So data migration really is a cornerstone of any SAP transformation project. It directly affects the overall success of the delivery, as it enables users to validate their new system and the reliability of their system against their real business data. So despite being fundamental to the delivery, generally the migration work stream is underestimated. It's often thought as just moving data from one place to another. How hard can it be, right? So therefore it lacks governance and control that's often seen in other areas of the overall delivery, from implementation to testing, integrations, etc. And as a result of it, kind of setting yourself up for disaster by not having that same level of governance from the start within the migration work stream. Arguably, that's kind of down to the complexity around the delivery. So unlike implementation and testing and integration, which is often SI-led and focused, the migration work stream needs cross-team efforts and collaboration to be successful. So again, sometimes the business may not have all of the necessary skills to support the data partner in delivering the migration. Again, functional consultants that are on the program might have other problems and data becomes a secondary issue to them. So as a result of that, it causes the migration workstream to get pushed to the side a little bit, and then it rears its ugly head a little bit later on within the delivery. So it's a really difficult thing to think about. But it cannot be understated that if a migration is done poorly, the overall impact that can have on an organisation can be felt long into the future. It can potentially limit the return on investment that the business is expecting to see in the short to medium term, because there's could be missing data. You could struggle to run your processes through properly, and again that performance and those problems can really have a negative impact on the delivery and on the software that's being implemented, and that's sometimes difficult for organisations to shake. So it can really have a disastrous impact on an organisation if it isn't done well.
Yes, and it's almost a case of the problem can compound potentially as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so from a real-world example perspective, in data migration projects, where things went spectacularly well or tremendously bad, could you share?
I'll give an example of both, shall I? So we've worked with a number of organisations to deliver data migration assessments, effectively to see where they are, to see the health of the work stream. And when we go in, so you've got to remember these programs are usually already well underway, and we spot gaps immediately. That could be problems in RACI, who's accountable, who's responsible for certain activities, and fundamental aspects of a migration, things like reconciliation of data post it going into your target SAP application, isn't accounted for. How that's done isn't accounted for. So as you get to the crunch time of the delivery, this key process is just not done. And if it's not done, you don't know what has successfully gone in, what hasn't successfully gone in. So what we've been able to do through some of these assessments is identify, we've got a problem, we need to fix it, and help organisations get past that and actually start to deliver properly. So effectively, we've seen organisations that are just not planning properly. They are not considering all of the activities that are required. On the flip side to that, we've seen an example where there was a really engaged customer, Meggitt, one of the aerospace companies within the UK. They were really well engaged with us from the beginning. They assigned the right people to support in cleansing data and harmonizing data across multiple SAP environments as they were consolidating into one. And what this enabled us to do is actually deliver a really smooth go-live process, and actually we were very successful with that. And that was down partly to the collaboration between ourselves and our colleagues at Meggitt in delivering that.
Great, okay. So from a Kagool delivery perspective, clearly multiple data projects across multiple industries. How has this experience shaped your approach, or our approach, and what delivers consistent results
Sure.
to achieve this?
Okay. So we're not just successful in delivering migration projects, we're also quite successful in rescuing them as well. There's a number of reasons why migration projects will fall into problems, and I'm not going to list them off all here because I'll be here till the end of the day. But really, the most successful ones tend to have one thing in common, and that is realistic planning. I mentioned it a moment ago that integrating the work stream into the rest of the plan and the overall delivery of SAP really does help. We've seen examples where it just gets shoehorned into the side of a project, or it's just considered a line on a plan which just says data migration. There's no real consideration of all of the different tasks and expectations that need to happen to make it a reality. When organisations and programmes don't do that, effectively, as soon as you realise that you need to do it, you're in firefighting mode immediately, aren't you? So what we do is we make sure that whenever we're part of it, we ensure that it's well integrated, the plan makes sense, because again, I've seen examples of plans where we're expected to have migrated all the data within a couple of hours of the system being available to us because of that lack of integrated planning. So it's really important that planning is done. For me personally, one of the things that I've done is I always go in and just check deliverables. What's being delivered when? Does that planning make sense? Does everyone in the program know what they are to deliver, what they're responsible for? And that's where I start making sure that the foundations are in place so that we can deliver successfully.
Great. So that's essentially the scene set, as it were, in relation to data migration projects. What we're going to tackle next is a bit more about tooling. Great. So what we're going to cover off is a bit more about Kagool's Pulse tooling capabilities. And clearly that's a cornerstone of success, which we've sort of hopefully outlined to yourselves. Why is the right tooling so essential for SAP data migration projects?
Well, firstly, the tooling is only as effective as the people that are using it and ultimately the process that it will fit into. So when it's done correctly, tooling offers the ability to manage more effectively and efficiently the migration work stream. It can automate a lot of the processes. It can control the work stream in a better way. For example, version controlling of documents. Some migration activities can create hundreds, if not thousands, of spreadsheets over the full life cycle. So if you've got a large team working in spreadsheets, I think we've all been there, where somebody's working on an offline copy and then things become mismatched. So tooling can really help with things like that. So before agreeing to input any tooling into your delivery, you really need to understand what is it going to do, what are the benefits that it will bring, and actually how will it help us deliver this migration quicker and more effectively. Some of the things that I like to think about are what bits of the process need to be more efficient. So you can think about the extraction of your source data, the transformation process, whether that's cleansing, enriching data, completing your mappings from source to target, even error handling. Actually, error handling is a really key thing here. Being able to tell and triage issues directly to those that are going to fix it. Some tooling will enable you to load the data directly into SAP and even do things like non-committing, where it will simulate that data load and tell you how good are we looking. Furthermore to that, you've got the reconciliation piece at the end of it. Is the tooling going to help with that and automate that? Because again, what we're trying to do here with tooling is really make the lives of those that need to review and sign off and validate the data sets and do that more effectively and efficiently. So tooling can really help do that. Finally, one thing that tooling should do is improve the visibility of the work stream. It's sometimes seen as a black box. What is the status of the data migration work stream? So tooling should really shine a light on that and say, for these data objects we're X percentage clean, these are what we need, this is what we need to do to get it to where it needs to be. And what that then starts to do is drive better decision making within the program to say, we might need to pause, or we might need to put some more resources in, or we're good to go, let's continue with the next steps, rather than getting them nasty surprises at those key decision points, those go, no-go decisions and things like that.
Yeah, and I think it's the expectation earlier rather than later, right? Like you said, it's too late to do anything about. So from a Kagool proprietary tool perspective in Pulse, what makes it unique, I guess, is the starting point, and how does it solve the common challenges which you've just outlined already in organizations during the migration?
Sure. So the product that we have, Pulse, is an SAP certified tool, and it does everything I just mentioned a moment ago. It does the extraction, it works around the transformation, cleansing, enriching, harmonizing data. It helps with error handling. It will auto triage out to empowered users to fix things, what they need to go and do. It will load the data into SAP, so you don't need a separate process for that. It will reconcile the data back from SAP, so you can then start to really get a good flavour on, well, how good are we? Can we proceed, yes or no? So it is, what it does as a product is it really helps to drive the whole process, and that's something that a lot of our competitor tools do, but I don't think they do it to the same standard, and there's always a few things that are missing, and I know some of our competitor tools don't do the loading bit, don't necessarily do the reconciling bit at the end. So there's more processes that you've got to account for within the delivery. So what I'd like to go back to is, where does Pulse really start to excel? Well, it's all about error handling for me and visibility of tasks. So we have in Pulse a concept of service level agreements. We can configure errors and send them out to users and track how quickly are they going through those problems. They can start to fix those issues, and then it will be reported that it's sorted. That helps, as I said earlier, get that visibility into the right people of where we are as a product. So it's a really good tool when it considers all of that process, and without it, the whole workstream still remains quite difficult to manage.
Yes, error tracking is quite hard, and I guess it helps with the whole data ownership.
Exactly, and what we've seen is organisations have used the product as part of their data migration activities, and then have kept the product in situ for a bit of time after to monitor and manage the data quality of data in SAP after go live. Because again, we've all been there where we've gone live and then business users are going straight in and changing data. And then there's usually a big argument on who's changed it, why have they changed it, and blaming whoever. But actually what this product will do is it will find those problems quite quickly still, and it gives the program time to quickly change it back or do something about it before it can really impact on the process that the business is trying to run.
So as far as examples from clients' deliveries, them using Pulse, from a measurable impact, perhaps you can explain a bit more around sort of data integrity, performance, compliance, and so on.
So I'll give the example of a company that we worked with, XP Power, a couple of years back. They'd already gone through and started the journey of moving from non-SAP to SAP. And they'd gone through a phase 1 delivery, which was ultimately successful, but there was problems, and they had problems with data migration in particular. So when they decided to continue the SAP implementation and bring more sites and more processes onto SAP, they recognized the need for a specialist data partner, and they reached out to Kagool. So we came in, we brought Pulse in to manage that extract, the transformation process, load and reconciliation as well, to help control it, give more visibility to them. As I said, their phase 1 delivery hadn't gone to plan. They didn't really know until after they had gone live some of the issues that were lurking in the system. So what this gave them was an ability to see all of that way up front. There was challenges, of course, but ultimately we were very successful in going live with their phase 2. I think 99.99% of data was loaded successfully and reconciled successfully at the first instance. So there was very minimal amount of work that we had to do to rectify anything. And that gave confidence to that company that they weren't going to find problems later down the line once the program had finished and everyone had rolled off. So that's where the product has really helped organisations get that confidence that they know that the data integrity is high and they're not going to see issues.
Yes, and I think from a tooling perspective, it needs to fit in to a lot of elements from a people and process perspective. But again, if you don't implement the right way, it could cause potential problems. So that's the end of segment 2. We're going to cover off a bit more around processes and structuring for success. So Lawrence, let's talk about process and what are some of the most common process-related mistakes in organizations during this data migration, and what are the consequences?
Change. Probably not surprised by that. Data migrations, SAP implementations, there will always be change. The design documents that you get at the beginning of the program will very much differ from probably what is ultimately delivered. And that's not a problem. However, within the data migration workstream, there has to be a robust process that supports that change, identifies that change, and enables that change to be implemented. One common thing that I see is the solution needs a change of sorts. The data impact is not thought about. And so the change is made, and then the first that the data team hear about it is when they can't load data or they get a bug raised against them to say, oh, this isn't correct. So that's a very common thing where change is not considered across the board. It's kept in its own silo for where that change or why that change has had to happen. So that's a very common thing. Other than that, documentation is another problem that we see quite regularly, where it's not up to date. It's not really complete enough to really understand what needs to be built, what needs to be delivered, what that data needs to look like. And that's all because the process isn't followed. Everyone knows that certain deliverables need to be completed, but what do those deliverables actually look like? What makes it a good deliverable, or a good document, sorry. So again, following those processes properly, making sure that your documentation is capturing everything that you need, everyone is comfortable, will really help the overall process run smoothly and run efficiently.
So Kagool has successfully delivered complex migrations. How do we ensure each project follows best practice while adapting to the unique client needs?
Well, at Kagool, we've got our own methodology that we've built up over, I think, the company, 20 years or so, and that's a methodology that we know works. So we generally follow that, which is, again, it's very much understanding what is required, understanding the design, building out the specifications of what each data load must look like, what is good in the target system, and then going through a very rigorous testing approach to make sure that the data is ultimately being moved in the right way. So we follow that. We also ensure that we are offering the right levels of service to our customers to ensure that all those aspects are being covered by us. So I mentioned it at the beginning of this discussion today, that we've seen races where there are certain aspects missing. And that's a very common thing. So again, when we say that we own something, we'll own it. We'll be responsible for it. We won't shirk our responsibilities on completing those activities. There will always be, as you said, unique client requirements. So again, our process is agile enough that we can account for that, whatever that looks like, whether that's we need to very quickly make changes to something, whether that's we need to add additional loads in, or even add additional mock cycles in. We're confident with our approach and our tooling, particularly when that's used, that those last minute requirements, we can support those organisations in delivering them, because it's a repeatable process, it's an efficient process, and it's something that we know that works.
Yes, and this is always put to the ultimate test during go lives, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't have enough time to react and respond.
Exactly, and if I'm honest, it's throughout the whole delivery, whether it's SIT, UAT, dress rehearsal, these things will come out. And again, it's about being aware that it's likely and having a process in place that enables us to adapt quickly.
Great. So can you share a customer story of where Kagool's structured approach has helped prevent major risks?
Yeah, sure. So we engaged with Calor Gas on their SAP implementation a while back. And we didn't bring tooling in. We were asked to come in to do an assessment, and we found some real gaps within their delivery of the migration work stream. The documentation was poor, and in some cases didn't exist. And as such, those technical migration consultants didn't have anything to go off. So what we did is we brought in some of our consultants, our specialist migration consultants, to effectively whip the program into shape. They came in, they got the documentation to the right standards, they were asking the right questions to the business about what they wanted, they were analysing issues and problems properly, which was not happening before. And as a result of that, through a lot of hard work and dedication from the team, they managed to get a program that was stagnating and just consistently delaying to a point where they were able to go live and actually go live with a reasonable amount of success. Even without the established tooling that we would normally bring, it was our process and our methodology and our documentation that we bring that really helped to put a tight lid around the work stream.
Which almost sort of brings into controls, right?
Exactly, and that's the simple thing, really, isn't it? It's just being able to control and understand where each program is at all times, and not leaving anything to chance.
So that brings it into the process segment. The next segment is going to be about people and the heart of migration success. With people being the heart of migrations, often it's said that technology is only as good as the people using it. So what skills or roles are essential for the success of an SAP data migration project?
So it's a really good question, actually. I think when most people think of a data migration, they think of the technical requirements that are needed. So SAP knowledge, SAP process knowledge, SQL knowledge, being able to just query data and help that transformation process. And all of that is really important, don't get me wrong. But I think often the work stream misses out on soft skills, the ability of the consultants on the program to analyze data really well, to problem solve, root cause analysis, really understanding what is the permanent corrective action. These are all buzzwords, right? But actually, it's really important and it's often missed. And that's where, for example, we come in. Like, when any of our consultants are involved, we make sure that they offer a really good problem-solving solution and have understood what is the root cause and what do we need to do to mitigate it or correct it going forward. If we don't do that, then that problem will manifest itself time and time again. It will continuously cause issues onto the program. So problem-solving, analysis skills are really important. On top of that, strong communication is needed. The data migration work stream, it talks not just to the technical leads and the program managers and the project managers, it will talk to those individuals in the business. It will talk to process owners, data owners. They will talk to absolutely everyone. And they need to be able to communicate well. They need to be able to understand business language and business talk, and be able to translate that into a technical language and vice versa. And they're difficult skills to have. Not everyone does have them, but it's really important that if you can do that, that helps with that communication, helps bring that work stream together and helps deliver the right results for the customer.
Yes, and really when it comes down to it, leading on to the next question, it does help the consultants in the right mindset, helps identify those skills, right? The skills gaps, and having the experience to know that that's an important gap to fill. So clearly there's often gaps, skill gaps in sort of migration teams. What happens once you've identified them?
Well, there's a few things just to go through then. So when you have these gaps, what can it cause? Well, it can cause delays in the program, first and foremost. But actually, slow decision making, it can impact the quality of the migration with inconsistent outcomes, risk of errors, or an increased risk of errors, I should say. It could increase the costs of the project. And even other things like morale and stress of the team members. If they are constantly struggling to fix an issue or they're being hounded for whatever reason, it can really have an impact. So once you've identified a skills gap or a number of gaps within the team, what can you do? Well, there's the easy things like training and upskilling. Ensure that those people involved in the project firstly understand what they're delivering, why they're delivering it, and help them achieve the necessary skills to support the overall project. You might need to bring in some external help or hire new people to fill those gaps. And whether that's somebody that you have in your team or you bring in an external partner, for example, like Kagool, then that's always an option. Knowledge sharing is a really key thing as well. Happens a lot in organisations where there's silos. But actually, sharing those experiences can really help smooth out this process. And it's just like any normal process, really, where a problem shared is a problem half, right? And finally, clear documentation. Documenting what is a problem, what does somebody need to do, what needs to be helped to get the program back on track, or get somebody up to speed on what they're trying to do. Give them something that they can refer back to so that they can become familiar with those tasks and understand again where that fits into the wider picture.
So how then has Kagool helped fill gaps to ensure a smoother migration?
We have offered migration consultants to go in, both as analysts and technical consultants, to support where a program or a customer has struggled with certain aspects of that. We're currently in a delivery at the moment where, for example, there's a lack of bod skills. So we've supported the customer with bringing in our technical resources to help bring that program back on track and get those BODS jobs running as successfully and as smoothly as possible. So that's one thing. Again, I mentioned a few moments ago that we support with improving documentation and bringing things together effectively. We can be seen as a pivot where we're interacting with multiple different teams, and we're the sort of the conduit that is driving those discussions. So again, that's where we've helped, driving discussions, making sure people are talking to each other, or we can bring in, as I said, resources to help with technical gaps and skills.
Yeah, and I think invariably when we would have come in, it's that pivot, right? That's really useful and almost becomes a differentiator as well, right? So I guess from the people perspective, we've covered off this segment. The next segment's going to be about differentiation and how Kagool stands out, which has sort of been touched upon, but we'll focus on that in a bit more detail. Right, so how does Kagool stand out? Clearly, as Lawrence has mentioned, there are other competitors in the space with other tools, but how can Kagool differentiate itself from global systems integrators out there focused on SAP data migrations, and what is our unique approach?
As I've mentioned, we've got a well-oiled methodology to deliver data migrations that's been well over 20 years in the making, I think. We know that process works. We know it's a process that will deliver the right results when implemented correctly. Where do we differ? So we bring the whole suite in. So we've got the tooling, we've got the knowledge, we've got the know-how, but actually what we do very well is the ownership of tasks. When we consider the activities within a SAP data migration in particular, arguably the majority of actions and activities sit with the customer. They've got to cleanse their data, they've got to enrich their data, they've got to figure out what data they want to actually take over to their new systems. But what we do is we handhold them through that journey, we take them on that journey, we make sure that they are answering those questions as we go. And in my experience, a lot of SIs are kind of leave them to it and will not really call out if there's any problems until it becomes a problem. So that's something that I'm really proud of what we do here, is we generally look after our customers and try and ensure that they are walked through that process properly, and everything is done to the right standard.
Yes, and I think you sort of answered my next question almost, which is, our unique approach is about making sure the client handles the change, handles the challenge earlier before it escalates to a massive problem.
Exactly. So we are advocates of starting this process early. Like, you can start your data journey or your road to a data migration well before your program starts. You can start identifying cleansing requirements. You can start doing all of that. And that's what we really advocate for. I've done a number of presentations and various other things to customers that show what that really looks like when you start the data journey at the same time as you start your delivery, which is actually there's a point in time where it's almost too late to really deliver effectively. So again, what we try and do is, as I said, we just try and take customers on that journey, try and get them to start that journey as soon as possible. And again, what I in particular enjoy doing is giving a true visibility of where the work stream is, good or bad. Organisations need to know where they are, and sometimes it's difficult for them to hear that, but I'd rather them know where they are in advance before it becomes a problem later on down the line. So visibility is something that we very much advocate as well, which is we'll tell you where you are, and we'll tell you the problems, and we'll tell you where there's things that are not quite going to plan, but we'll also come with the mitigation plans, and we'll come with how do we get out of that and really deliver for them.
Yeah, I think that's where our strong track record comes from, right?
Yep.
Being open and honest with the client, and sort of obviously we've learned lessons, and we share those lessons with clients. So from a we've delivered multiple migration projects. What could help other organisations, would you say, succeed in this?
Well, I'll go back to my first answer, and that is realistic planning. Planning properly will really set you on the right path. Without that realistic planning and integrated planning into the work stream, problems will always arise. So don't forget about data. It's important. It's arguably more important than anything else. What organisations are doing with data now and what it's enabling them to do with things like AI and stuff, it will all come back to what does your data look like in SAP. If that data's not very good, it's going to prevent you doing all of that. So don't treat the data work stream as a side quest almost. Treat it as almost the main event. Make sure that you're giving it every chance to succeed, every chance to get the right levels of data quality into your system, and that can then help to drive your organisation further on with different initiatives in the future. Other than that, it's all about just ensuring that you've got good ownership and understanding of what your data needs to look like, and just starting as soon as possible. Really starting as soon as possible is always a good thing.
And also recognising that the business needs to value it. I know there's a lot of businesses that do value their data, but that's the first and foremost point that you're trying to make here. Great, so as far as takeaways are concerned, clearly we want you to focus on people, process and tooling, which are essential for successful SAP data migration projects, and then obviously focus on making sure we can help reduce those complexities when it comes to multiple data projects that we've dealt with. And then essentially our unique capability from a Kagool Pulse perspective is dealing with end-to-end data migrations and how we have differentiated from other tools in the market as well as global systems integrators out there. Lawrence, is there any final thoughts on the session?
Yeah, if you've got any problems or if you've got concerns or you just want advice, just reach out to me or to Kagool, and we're happy to offer some thoughts and guidance on what we would do. I think it's important that you get as much information on what can go wrong and what can go right. So just give us a shout.
Good. So thanks for tuning in to Innovate Now. This is a Kagool podcast. So until next time, think different, build smart, and innovate now.